Our hypothesis is if there is more yeast in the cookies, then the cookies will rise higher. We used 2 different recipes for making our cookies. For our first recipe, we used the Nestle Toll House original recipe that in the beginning had baking soda, no yeast, but we added yeast as our independent variable. Then we found our second recipe online, which had no baking soda, and we also used yeast as our independent variable. And then we baked them in the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes.
Once the cookies cooled, we started taking our measurements. We took the average width, thickness, and diameter of each of the batches of cookies. In total, we had 6 different batches of cookies, including the ones with yeast and the ones without yeast.
These first cookies are just regular Nestle Toll House cookies, no yeast.
The second ones are also the regular Nestle Toll House cookie recipe, but we added a 4th tablespoon of yeast.
The third is also Nestle Toll House cookie recipe, but we added 1 tablespoon of yeast this time.
Our 4th recipe was the one we found online, but we took out the yeast, so it has no yeast and no baking soda.
This is also the recipe that we found online, but this time we added 1/4 tablespoon of yeast and no baking soda.
Our last batch of cookies we also found on the internet, and it had 1 tablespoon of yeast and no baking soda.
In conclusion, we learned cookies rise higher if the yeast is used alone, rather than using both yeast and baking soda.